It's time for Trench Talk, for your weekly infusion of metal and otherwise heavy music. I'm your host, Flight of Icarus from metaltrenches.com. If you're new to the channel or have not already, please do hit that subscribe button and like the video if you enjoy it. Today I got a couple things coming at you, starting off with a really cool interview with Sakis from Rotting Christ. Got to talk about the new album, navigating the black metal scene in other countries, and his current approach to songwriting. Afterwards, I have time for a few shoutouts, so if you're looking for that new blood, please do stick around. Hope you enjoy it.
Hello there, this is Sakis from Rotting Christ, and I play the guitars and doing the vocals and write the music for the band Rotting Christ.
Awesome. So I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. And one of the big things I kind of wanted to talk about is that obviously your band's been around for a really long time for things to kind of change quite a bit over the years. And with atheism kind of on the rise and seen as much more socially acceptable, at least here in the US, how do you feel like that's impacted reactions to your music and your religious imagery?
You know, we started like this. We started like rebels. We come from the second generation of black metal bands. This era they grow up with Mayhem, with Burzum, with Darkthrone. We had this anti-religious image back in the days. Still we have it, but nowadays I feel like we are more mature. We are not that extreme anymore. We don't say, let's burn a church or something, but we are. Yeah. We used to say that, back in the days. No, I don't know if you recently watched the movie, Lord of Chaos.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet, but I want to check it out. I'm always interested.
This is our story, more or less. We grow up this era, and we are very proud about this. But things have changed since then. You cannot, that's making sense to burn a church nowadays. It's better to write something. It's better to compose something. And this is what we are currently do as a band.
Do you feel like the reaction from the fans or particularly I'm thinking of kind of the censorship crew, it used to be there'd be a lot of religious types kind of up in arms about the music. And I feel like that's not so much the case anymore, but maybe it still is.
Oh, there is the censorship. Last year, for instance, we were jailed in Georgia, here in close to Russia. Just arrested because of our name or whatever. Put one whole day in the jail. And, there is, you live in the States, but believe me, not all the countries are like you say, for instance, concerning freedom of speech. Of course, you also have censorship, but believe me, in some other territories, it's really awful. And this is why sometimes that we as a band would like to play in these territories that would like to feel what we are doing. We can change maybe something. There are some metalheads over there that they feel the pressure from the government, from the ethics of the local society, and we always are there. We have played, you can't imagine which territories you have played, for the hell out, for the spirit. And we keep on doing this because I think that what we are doing maybe is something.
Yeah, and what you're saying really does make me think about how much I'm thankful that I was born in this country, because I do see the great differences between kind of what you're allowed to say and do here versus in some of the other.
I'm not ethnicist, but I'm realistic. I'm a person that have traveled all around the world. I have met all their cultures, and I think that your culture is quite open-minded, which means that I always like to play in the USA. Because, of course, there are some extremers there. But on the other hand, you have the right to say, you call your band Rotting Christ. No, this is something. Everyone has the right to believe what he wants. We believe that Christ, that the religions are rotting. Organized religions are rotting. Why? You don't have the right? Come on, we come from Greece, from a country that's born with democracy. So we have to be open-minded, and we have to fight for other opinions, even if we don't agree with them.
Well, I agree with you 100% there. Do you encounter any sort of protesting or problems when you tour in the U.S.?
Yes, we had some. Yes, back in the days, yes. But
What?
okay, not a big problem, not a big deal. But I know something. I have the feeling that recently, the last 5 years maybe, people are getting more skeptic again. They feel a little bit weird. They have a lot of phobias. We have kind of step backs as a society. Don't know why this happened, but there are obvious some reasons like less money, more people, superpopulation of the global population. But I have this feeling, and I think that now is time to work harder than ever. Playing, yes, playing all around the world, playing even if we don't get money, playing for the spirit, playing for some people. This is art of culture. This is our attitude. Don't forget that we come from as I like to say, from the last analog humanity era. We come from, we grow up without phones, without cell phones, without computers, everything. We learned a lot from this. We learned a lot, and we learned to be, first of all, human. Something that we try to keep nowadays. Not exactly 100%, but I think that we try a little bit.
Yep. Well, speaking of kind of growing and evolving and maturing, I mean, obviously this new album still has a lot of religious themes, but what do you feel like makes this album different from albums in the past?
It's the concept of the album. The Heretics. I was inspired from big heretics during the history of time, people that wrote some really important things and were criticized as heretics in their era. So I think that we, the metalheads, extreme metalheads at least, we are heretics. The path you have chosen is quite heretical. So I was inspired from this, and this is what makes the album different.
Could you speak a little bit more on kind of what those theoretical concepts are?
I was inspired from Poe, I was inspired from Nietzsche, I was inspired from Thomas Paine. There are important quotes, important sayings from those people. From Dostoevsky, from Edgar Allan Poe, I say that, yes. From Greek heretics, Kazantzakis, from many people. And that made the album a little bit more, let's say, philosophized. I don't know if there is this word in English. That made a little bit different, this album, this time.
So conceptually, I would agree this is a little bit different. I did feel like musically, this album sounds similar in many ways to Rituals, at least in my mind.
Yes, more guitar, with more guitars.
Yeah.
This time we used more melodies in the guitars. That makes different a little bit musically, the album. But, it's not only music. For me, it's also lyrics. The more I grow up, the more I pay attention to the lyrics.
Yeah, and it just feels like the writing process is more focused on kind of overall feeling as opposed to like individual parts. Because I know I hear some people, and some people say it's a criticism, but for me, so my take on your more recent material is that it's not maybe super complex, and it's not about the technicality of different members. It's more
I don't like
about
technical. The more I grow up, the less technical music I like. I like music, songs that have a target, and this is very important for me. I have written 14 albums. I don't want to play something very technical to prove that I'm the best guitarist or the best drummer. Blah blah. No, this is not for me anymore. For me, it's more important to write songs that maybe they're simple, but they have a lot of meaning. And this is how I usually work the last years. I'm talking about me, sorry, but because I'm the only composer, okay, of the band. And that's what I'm trying to do nowadays.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Like, I really like super technical music, but I also like bands like your own that kind of just write more sort of stuff that gets stuck in your head. It's more, I'd even say, sort of catchy. I need
that. Yes, more catchy. The more I grow up, the more catchy I am. I don't know what's going on.
You're going soft in your old age.
I've grown so much, maybe. I don't know.
It happens. It happens to the best of us. Yeah, and I think, in fact, I would argue that Rotting Christ kind of does that better than any other band. Like, you've just kind of honed in on this particular sound that is very much sort of the Rotting Christ sound, but it works well and it comes together and it makes for an interesting listen. And you do still throw in some other elements there. Like, you've got that one really solid guitar solo kind of later on in the album. And I also really like, I'm feeling bad that I'm blanking on the track name right now, but you've got one track with the female backup vocalist on it. And
this Russian thing, yes.
Yeah, I really love that one.
Thank you. Even if you don't understand, right? You see, multicultural.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I honestly prefer when bands sing and scream in their own language as opposed to feeling like they have to translate it.
Yes, what we are trying the last years. I say, all right, we are not English. This is not our mother tongue. So sometimes we can express ourselves better by using our mother tongue. So why not try something in metal music? If you like, that made me really happy because this is something in Russian. No.
It's great. That's possibly my favorite track on the album, and I put in my review that I thought it was kind of the most beautiful song that Rotting Christ has written to date.
I think so. Beautiful, yes. I don't like that much this word, but...
Yeah, same. I mean, it's not a word I would normally associate with your band, but in that case, yes. So how did that song end up coming to be?
It just came up with a song like this. It has to do with nature, with paganism. So I asked someone from a Slavic nation, because they are very well educated about paganism, and to help me out. So I called a friend of mine, and Irina, and just asked her, do you want to contribute? And she answered positive.
I'm really glad it happened. It brings a lot to the album. It reminded me a little bit of, on Aeonian, you had some kind of almost like tribal female backup singing, but this took it to the forefront.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to answer this question, but it was something that was kind of kicking around in my mind because there's been a lot of criticism I've seen in certain metal subgroups about black metal and concerns about like Nazi sympathies and things of that nature. And particularly I've seen people single out the Greek black metal scene as being sort of an incubator for like Nazi bands. And I don't agree with that at all, but I was curious if you had any take on that.
There are a lot, but I don't agree too. I think that black metal was not born to be a political thing. Was born to fight against conservatism and religion. And Nazi bands is like has nothing to do with our scene, in my opinion. Okay. Or for the other hand, they talk about war, about everything. Maybe this is something, maybe that fits, with the black metal feeling. But on the other hand, if we start like this, it will make our precious music political, and then we will destroy what we built. No, I mean, I have nothing to do with this. No, I have played all around the world, and I don't understand bands that they're Nazi and they play all around the world. How you can be a Nazi when you play, for instance, in Israel, in Arabia, in Arabic countries, in Asia? I mean, it doesn't fit.
Yeah, I agree. And I also agree that, to me, it destroys the music. Some people would argue otherwise and say that music is inherently political and it has to be political, but I'd much rather let the music speak for itself and let me have my own interpretation of that instead of being force-fed a specific message.
Yes, I totally agree with you.
But it sounds like you're trying to just even stay out of that completely and just do your thing.
Completely, man. We have an Arabic song in the new album. Come on.
Yeah.
You don't do well with Arabic culture. On the other hand, I read something because there are people, open-minded people there too. If you listen something in Arabic, have you ever think someone speaking, talking, singing in Arabic language in black metal?
It's beautiful.
Just listen to the song. Yeah, the voice of the universe.
Yeah.
Which is about Zoroastrianism. we try to bring people closer with our music. I know there are problems nowadays, okay, but we try to keep people closer.
Yeah. And it would be nice to hear more of that. Like, I've heard a few really solid bands out of the Middle East and India and some of these other countries where there is a lot of repression around art. And it makes me sad that we can't hear more of that and that these people have to kind of stay in hiding.
Yes, that's true.
Well, given that our site is kind of focused more on underground bands and up-and-coming stuff, are there any Greek metal bands that you particularly are appreciating right now that are sort of newer, younger to the scene?
Yeah, there are too many, but I really don't want to mention one because I'm sure that I forget about the rest. So just Google, rotting Greek black metal scene, and you'll find out many good bands coming from here. Greece has a very strong scene, and I think that it proves with all the bands that they have created.
Okay. Who do you find yourself listening to a lot now?
I try to listen all the latest releases. Now I'm not stuck in a special release, but I listen a lot of stuff. I mean, all the new material that's coming up, I try to listen, of course, through YouTube or whatever, or Spotify or whatever, and they try to be refreshed. What's going on in the scene? That's very important. Really, I cannot say what bands it's important for me at the moment, but I try to listen all the bands that coming up especially from black metal.
So what's next for Rotting Christ? What do you got going on right now?
Touring the world. If we are lucky, we tour the world. This will be a worldwide tour with a new album. Hope to be strong. Don't forget, we are not young anymore. We must be lucky. Yes, we should be lucky to keep on touring. Try hard, because this is our precious thing in our life. So I want to believe that we're going to have a lot of shows worldwide and hope to be back in the States. New York actually will come back in Las Vegas this August. So hope to stick some shows there.
Yeah, I like hearing from kind of the older guard, so to speak, in terms of touring, because it's interesting to see just how the mentality has shifted. I was just interviewing a couple weeks ago the bass player from Enciferum, and he's been, doing this for a while, and he talked about, it used to be all partying and drinking and being irresponsible and antics backstage, and now it's get up, do yoga in the morning, prepare for the show, and...
You see, it's not about rock and roll. You cannot be rock and roll after 60. Only Lemmy did that.
Yeah. Lemmy is an outlier. I don't know how people like that keep the pace.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, anything else you want people to know about the album or anything that's in the works?
Yes, I'm covered. I would like to present our 14th album for our band. This is an album, I don't know if we changed the world with this album. We didn't change the world with this album, but I definitely will present a very quality album and very soulful album. This is an album that comes from our soul and hope to touch your soul.
Yeah.
So see you in the USA, and until then, keep the spirit alive, brothers.
Yeah. How much longer do you see yourself doing this?
I don't know, if I'm lucky, till I die.
Well, here's hoping, and hoping for many more years before then.
All right. Keep the spirit alive.
Yep. So that's it for the interview portion. Rituals is out now via Season of Mist, but now we're going to move on to some shoutouts. First up, we've got Warfist with Grünberger. Warfist is a no-nonsense black and thrash metal band out of Poland. I'd recommend them for fans of Venom, Destroyer 666, and Early Bathory. And honestly, as I put it in my review, this is definitely going to be sacrilege for some, but I describe Warfist as what I wish Venom sounded like. As much as I am a Venom fan and I enjoy me some early Venom, I just enjoy this album better than I've liked any other Venom album before. It's really consistent. Every song is fantastic. There's just a huge energy and driving force behind it. Great riffs. The drums really shine and bring out all of the air drumming and air guitar that you can imagine. I'm always out looking for the latest kind of high art concept albums out there. That's sort of my forte. But sometimes it's nice to just get an album like this that you can just bang your head to and want to unveil some darkness. Check it out.
Of hatred is coming to hunt you. His mind is filled with pure evil. His deeds are infamous.
Alright, next up we've got Scarlett Dress with Endless. Scarlett Dress is a progressive metalcore band based out of US and India. Recommend them for fans of Periphery, Architects, and Polaris. And I have been really just sad since last year that there's been a really big drought in terms of metalcore. I still consider myself a big metalcore fan. It was a big part of my formative years to building towards much heavier stuff, and I still have a special place in my heart for it. So it's nice to have a band like Scarlett Dress come through and really just deliver a really solid debut album. It was just an experience of, thank God, like finally, finally we've got a good metalcore album to listen to. Especially after, as some of you know, I was very disappointed with the last Architects album, and I feel like this helps to fill that same niche. So great, genty hooks, really catchy singing and screaming. There's even some deathcore-ish breakdowns, and also some really impressive like mathcore noodling, especially again in that track Nucleus. I kind of wish there was more of that. Things start to settle into more of kind of a traditional straightforward metalcore flow from there. But even so, solid album. If you don't mind stuff kind of on the lighter side and sometimes even getting into a poppier kind of under oath space, then I highly recommend you check out Endless. Next up, we've got Fange returning with Punir. Fange is a French blackened sludge band, and this new album is out via Throat Ruiner Records. I'd recommend them to fans of The Lion's Daughter, Drouth, and Lord Mantis. And this is kind of a different album for Fange. I've been watching them since about 2015, I think. They've dropped 3 albums that I've covered since then. And while they tended to be a pretty straightforward black and sludge act along the lines of things like Plebeian Grandstand in the past, this new one is definitely their most death-influenced outing. It takes all of those ugly, filthy, Lord Mantis-y elements that they already had and then infuses it with a lot of old-school death with really buzzing grooves, a little bit of death doom in there, absolutely raging D-beats, and of course, if you've been listening for a while, you know how I feel about D-beat. It often sounds like it's straight out of like the 80s or early 90s. And then also on top of that, kind of combining old school with new school, they've got these really spooky electronic effects that made me think about the Lion's Daughter album as well. So yeah, it's been exciting to see this band develop over the years, and I'm excited to see where they go next. I would argue this is their best album to date. Definitely give it a listen. And last but not least, giving you a double dose of black and thrash here with Lucifera and their new album La Casiera de Brujas via Dunkelheit Produktionen. This is a Colombian black and thrash duo made up of shredder David Hellraiser and the vicious frontwoman Alejandra Blasfemia. I'd recommend it to fans of Rebel Wizard, Holocausto, and again, Destroyer 666. I've been interested in potentially playing this for my mother-in-law because she's actually from Cali, Colombia. Definitely not much of a metal fan, but she's pretty open-minded. She does love music. This is probably my favorite act that's come out of Colombia. I've heard some of their past material, but they've really taken it to a new level with this album. Really consistent. Again, really fantastic riffs. Kind of got this 80s, early 90s vibe once again, bringing that old school sound into the production and even the approach to songwriting and the choices of hooks. David's fantastic on the guitar, especially on rippers like Sigillum Diaboli and Brujera. And of course, Alejandra is as vicious and violent and rebellious as ever. I really love her as a front woman. It's always exciting to be able to share great female-fronted acts. And I've heard people arguing about, like, maybe we should just toss out female-fronted as a descriptor. But my argument against that is that, to me, that extra descriptor is something that draws me in. Like, if I just saw this band and people were like, oh, it's a black and thrash band, I might be interested, but honestly, when I see female fronted in the description, it immediately piques my interest more, because it just brings a different dynamic, and I like to see what's going on in that area. So I'm going to continue to do that. Not because I think that we need to be separating male-fronted and female-fronted bands into separate categories, but simply because I think that does draw the interest of a specific crowd that would be more likely to listen to and support this band. So speaking of which, definitely do that. The album is out now. And that'll do it for this episode of Trench Talk. Hope you enjoyed the interview and at least one of the shout-outs. Walk away with something that you can pick up and take with you. Once again, if you have not already, please do hit that subscribe button and share with your friends. Encourage them to do the same. You can also follow us on social media via Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Vero, and also on Bandcamp, where you can find free samplers of other great underground bands that we've covered in the past. But for now, this is Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.